I don't know. This was crazy. I didn't press record yet.
Oh,
This person cannot park their Tesla out
I
there.
was gonna say, I was like, took him that long just to park.
Awesome. So here we are. Megan and I are back in the house to the Asian Sensations podcast. So, not the show today. We really need to talk a little bit about that
Yeah, we do.
setup, by the way.
We do. We have to fix that.
Because so last time, if you've watched the show, I was like behind Chris because we were like right here next to each other.
It was kind of like this, like as if this was where the camera is. I'm Chris. I mean, like I'm you.
Yeah.
And you were Chris, and it was like.
Oh, it's just really awkward. So we have to fix it.
Weird.
We'll fix it. So we're gonna do a show. We're gonna talk about fear and detachment
Yes.
on Friday. Friday fear. Ooh, we could have an entire theme about fears in October, Megan.
That's spooky.
Ooh. I started pressing record already here on the Anchor app. All right.
Are you cooking it up as per
What
usual?
would you say? Filling it in with planes, and I put the bullet.
No, she's talking about her podcast.
Awesome.
She had to explain it to Sean McGregor what it was about.
Craziness. All right. I'll start us off. Hey everybody, it's Sherm here, the Crazy Asian.
And it's Megan, and welcome back to the Asian Sensations podcast.
Woo! It feels so nice to be back. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
So I apologize for any listeners out there that's like, hey, when's the next episode coming out? Well, wait no longer. Here you go.
And if you weren't waiting for it, surprise! You get it anyways.
Whee! So today we want to talk about fear and detachment.
Yes.
And so, but before we go any further, let's first hear a word from our sponsor. Have you gotten asked to do
No.
sponsorships yet?
No.
Okay.
Did you make more cabbage from yours?
I haven't checked yet, but you're probably right. I probably did make some cabbage.
Oh my god, I thought it went away. I was supposed to be like, you're kidding me.
What are you doing to me?
You have to message no tonight. But yeah, so if y'all would like to come, it's Sunday at my apartment complex from 1 to 4 p.m. I'm going to provide refreshments and snacky snacks.
That's cool. Oh, if probably just one of us, because
Yeah, we can't tote all
you
four.
don't want the colony coming.
Yeah, I can't feed the colony. Sorry.
Unless you want to have it at Costco.
My Meet Monet event is at Costco. I do love Costco. That's where I'm going to buy most of the stuff is from Costco.
Money. I'm at $56 right now and 25 cents from
That's
this action.
nice. That's pretty good.
I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
Better than a poke in the face.
And you got that 500 for winning.
Oh wow, it totally didn't. Mine didn't draft over. Did yours draft over?
Yes.
Yeah. Nonetheless, let's just keep going. We'll keep rolling.
Yours did it?
It's still. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's just slow. All right, so I think I'll just start it off, Megan, because I got this email from our intern that we had over the summertime. And it was interesting just because, do you remember we were talking about him and it seemed like he was hot and then cold. Like
Yeah.
some days he'd come in and you're like, wow, this guy is totally the best intern.
Yeah.
And we only had 2, so it's not hard to be
If you're
the
not
best.
number 1, you're number 2.
Yeah, you are, and if you're not first, you're last, I guess, according to
Yeah, the two, having 2 interns.
So what was interesting is that sometimes he would come in late, and I don't know how many times you and I talked to him about that. And
Oh
then,
my gosh.
But then I remember the last presentation, he definitely put a lot more effort. It seemed like he was
Yes.
prepared with his thoughts. It was a collective, cohesive thought process from start to finish.
Yeah.
And compared to the other intern, it's just like they kind of threw it up there.
Which is weird because in terms of other areas of the internship, she excelled more.
Yes.
So, very odd. But yeah, so.
And then so I sent, he emailed today, and I showed Megan the email, and it basically says, hey, you know what? I want to be honest about kind of what happened over the internship. I enjoyed what I did, but I was fearful that this is something maybe that I want to do, but I could fail in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes when we have that fear, it has a tendency to detach ourselves, and that's what he said for himself, is that he pulled away.
Yeah.
But yet here he is looking back as he's done different various interviews, and he has another little part-time internship in the banking arena. He's like, this is really what I want to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really made me think, as you and I were thinking about podcasts and topics, how people totally do that in their lives, is that they experience something and they think, oh no, I'm afraid of that, and they completely do the exact opposite.
Yeah. Or I think, well, like really what he was saying in there was like he had like that fear of failure, which also caused him to detach. And so we were talking about how that can relate to every area of life outside of just like from a work or business perspective. I mean, that can happen with like anything.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to kind of talk about that today and just see where this goes with our thoughts. But yeah, I think that fear and detachment do go hand in hand because, I mean, typically when you're scared of something, you avoid it.
Right.
You know, like if you're, for example, it's Halloween, it's spooky season. I'm not going to a haunted house. Like, I am one of those people, I don't watch scary movies. Like, I have fear. But, you know, so obviously I'm not going to go to it because I'm scared of it. So, same thing with like when you're scared of failure. That's why a lot of people don't get into certain, they just don't do certain things. Like, you know, they've always wanted to sing, but you know they're scared of singing in public, so they never go to like an open mic night or whatever. And you know, or you're scared to be in a relationship because of something that happened prior to, so you stay away from them, or you find yourself detaching. So there's a lot of correlations.
Yeah, and you bring up relationships, and it reminds me very much a conversation I had with my oldest brother. So my oldest brother he was married, and then he got divorced, and then he got in another serious relationship years down the road, and she ended up, he caught like in her text messages or something that she was totally cheating on him. And so for him, since then, and that was, gosh, I want to say almost 12 years ago.
Oh wow.
And he hasn't allowed himself to be in a serious relationship since.
Yeah.
So he's like, and it's not like, but at the same time, he's never told me like, sure, I want to be in a relationship, like a committed one. But anytime that he's in serious with a girl, he's always like, well, it's kind of my way or the highway, and so I'm kind of cool, right? So you can go do your own thing, I'm gonna go do mine. And so he's totally like walled up, right? So the moment that you exemplify similar behavior as like, this pushback, he's like, dude, forget you, I'm gone. Like, so for him, he like what he wants to do, his prioritization of life is all about him.
Yeah.
Not in a selfish way, just in this is how I protect myself.
Yeah, I think that's like a protection, like a protective mechanism. I can't think of the word.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's even the right word.
It is now.
It is
in the
now.
podcast.
Yeah. So, no, but I think that's natural. I think a lot of people, they typically, when they've experienced some sort of like trauma, I would say, like shark attack victims, not all the time, but most of the time they're fearful of the ocean. They're not going to get back in. It takes them years to really get back into the ocean without, freaking out that they're going to get attacked again. So I think that's just human nature to always have like fear. But naturally detachment comes with it. So as you were talking and you were explaining about, the intern, as you were talking about him and just kind of what our experiences were, it did make me think about it being very similar to like a relationship, where sometimes when, from a psychological standpoint of relationships, a lot of the time people get into relationships before they're ready to get into them.
Yes.
And they carry a lot of baggage into the next relationship if they haven't worked it out within themselves beforehand. And so when you were saying like, we'd be so confused. Like one day we'd be like, oh my God, everything's great. And he's like, he's focused and he's on fire. And then the next day it's like, okay, like, do you want to be here? And it just made me kind of think like, I'm sure there's a million people out in the world that deal with relationships that are like that.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, one day he or she is like showering me with love, like gifts and like encouraging text messages, and they cooked me dinner and like all this stuff before I came home. And the next day it's like, we're fighting, or like they're cold to me, they don't want to like, like physical touch is not a thing, and it's like wishy-washy, and usually it's because they have some sort of fear of getting too close in relationships.
And then, so I remember I talked to a therapist after my divorce because I didn't want to take any baggage, right, onto my sons.
Yeah.
And so, just because half of them
Or her.
The DNA is her. And so I remember talking to the therapist, and she's like, yes, she's like, what we call this on our side as a therapist is emotional stacking.
Yep.
So you reacted a certain way emotionally. So, for example, ex-wife would be like, oh, Megan, or not ex-wife, or ex-spouse, or ex-relationship says, oh, Megan, where were you? Like, why are you out so late? Because they're distrustful, not because of you, but because of their previous relationship. They're bringing this into the new relationship. So they're taking that emotion of how they reacted to you being out late with friends to how they were treated before when their ex was out with friends. It was because that other person was cheating on them. So they almost, it's not that they think that you're that other person, it's just that that's how they react.
Like a trigger.
And it goes back to like human nature, to the point of like almost like caveman. When caveman experienced something bad, like touching fire, well, don't touch fire again because it burns.
Yeah.
And so it's a way that our mind, just that lizard-like mind part, automatically remembers how to react to certain things. It's just that emotionally we act weird in relationships.
Yeah, and I think that that's very true about the whole like emotional stacking thing, because I will say that not now obviously, but I would say like from my last relationship, the relationship that I was in prior to that one, I mean, there was so much emotional stacking that was brought into it, and emotional baggage, which now that I like look back on it, I'm like, oh, sorry, dude.
Right.
My bad. But
so if you're listening,
it's okay. You got a wife now. You're fine, I guess.
I like how it's I guess. The confidence of Megan is still so high.
It is.
You're okay.
You're fine. You're fine. Whatever.
It's still his loss.
Yeah, it is still your loss. Everybody's losses. Anytime I leave something, anything, it's always their loss.
That's right. Just note that if you decide to listen to another podcast, it's your loss.
Yeah, it's your loss that you're missing out on all this greatness. But yeah, I mean, I think that that's just normal, and I think a lot of people do that in other areas too.
Yeah.
In terms of like just pulling from like a network marketing thing, right? People start a lot of network marketing has been around for years. Like, it's not a new phenomenon. It's just that the gig economy is now a thing where it makes direct sales and network marketing so much more prevalent. But, there's tons of network marketing companies that have been around for 10, 15 years that people have been a part of. And where I think I've noticed is that sometimes people are like, oh, well, I don't want to join your company because of the experience I had with another company.
Right.
Where, that is that fear and detachment, because it's like, look, I failed in this, or it wasn't what I thought it was, so I don't even want to give this a chance. So, that's just like another example. And I don't know if people really do that as much I guess they could do it like in jobs, like in like in corporate jobs.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't want to be I don't want to be a sales director and run a team, because last time I was a sales director and ran a team, like, it was just too much stress. I just didn't like it. It was just too much to bear. Whereas you could be going to a new company where you would still have the same role and still have the same responsibilities, but maybe you have more support. So
absolutely, I think one of the struggles that we'll have a lot of times is we'll look at certain circumstances and we place it only on what we know.
Yeah.
Right? And so if we had a bad experience, then we have a tendency not to want to do that thing again, even if we know that the circumstances are totally different and maybe will lead to success, will lead to what we want as an outcome. And that could be, it could be relationship. We've just found the greatest person. They're really vibing with us. They really understand us. But yet, because of the way that we were treated in the past, we have a tendency to just not want to fully surrender to the relationship.
Yeah. And I think you can go one of two ways, I think, from a relationship standpoint, is like, fear can lead you either towards detachment, or it could lead you towards like anger and like false accusations. You know, so like to use the example of the intern, like his reasoning was, he said that the reason why he was so detached during the internship was because of his fear of failure.
Yep.
And then he realized, you know, I just need to get over that fear, and this is the career that I want to be in. So kind of similar, if you take it from a relationship standpoint, like kind of, I would say like, so your brother, his fear is that, you know, if I get too attached to somebody, they're going to fail me, like,
and I get hurt.
The others, and I get hurt. So his coping mechanism, that's what it was. Coping mechanism, not a protective mechanism, but I guess. But the coping mechanism is to detach himself and say, well, we'll just live separate lives, but like we'll still be in a relationship together, but like you go do your thing, I'll do my thing. Like at the end of the day, like it's just all about me in my mind, which I don't know. I kind of, now that I think about it, I'm like, am I your brother?
Yeah. So Megan just literally like light bulb went on, and she's like, this sounds like a really good idea.
This sounds like what I do now. I'm like, I want somebody that can live their own life, and I live my own life, but we like live it together.
Yeah.
But
so we kind of like occasionally bump into each other.
Yeah.
Based on our
It's like,
schedules.
oh hey, look, you're in the house too. Cool.
Hey, we are in a relationship occasionally.
Yeah. No, I'm not trying to be like that. I just, on a side note, on a side tangent, I'm more of a person that I like independence, and a lot of people can't understand that in a relationship, because I think sometimes people in relationships have the mindset of when two become one. Right. And I think it's like two people can still be two people, but like love each other and be in a relationship and like help each other reach their goals without being like, oh, now my life is your life, and now I'm like, the visual in my head is really weird, but like I've just morphed into you. But anyways, I don't know where I was going with this. But on the other side of the coping mechanism is, I think, like false accusations and anger. To where, you know, if something happens, and I think that we've talked about the emotional stacking. I don't know if it's on the podcast or if it was in a meeting. I think we had done like a meeting, or no, I think it was one of our book clubs, where we talked about emotional stacking, to where like when you, if you like, you used it, how you described it was more in a business sense, like, correct. You know, if you feel like your manager is coming at you, like if you worked with a bad manager prior to, and you just felt like they were always very critical of you in terms of being like, well, you know, they're always like yelling, like, why didn't you do this and all of that. So then when somebody else at a new job asks you that same question, even though they will probably be coming in from a place of wanting to help you, not just criticize you, you're automatically like defensive.
Right.
So I think that's the same way that people can be in relationships, is that, you know, if they like see that, okay, their spouses or their significant others, you know, staying late at work or whatever, or they're on their phone a lot more. It could be work related or something that has nothing to do with cheating, but that's like their first thought is to be like, oh my God, you're cheating on me.
Yes. And which is interesting, just because it might look the same. Yeah. But it's not the same, because it's not the same person.
I think what changes is intent. Yeah. That's the difference between everything, is the intent behind it. Because, you know, if just kind of going back to that, like if there's two managers, one, if they both pose the same question to you of like, why haven't you hit your target? Right. It really, the question changes with the intent, because it's like, are they asking it because they want to berate you and like humiliate you for it and yell at you for why you did it? Or is it because they're asking because they want to help you? They want to say, well, let's look and see why you aren't hitting your targets.
Yeah. And so that's where I think a lot of times when we can face the fear and almost in a sense like scientifically like dissect it or accept it, right? That you basically say, so for example, if you go to like a Halloween, if you tell yourself, keep constantly telling yourself, this is fake, this is fake, this is fake, you still might be started, you still might be scared, but it might give you that strength to go through the haunted house without like being traumatized, right? And I think in relationships, when you can surrender to, you know what, I will get hurt. That's just how relationships are. We can't we can't set up our lives like it's a kiddie's bowling alley where you're like, everything's like buffered. Yeah, there's these buffers in our lives, and so, oh no, I don't want to hurt myself. I could bump into something. No, guess what? Life has sharp edges, and you're gonna get cut. You're gonna get some scrapes. You're gonna get some bruises, and so it's okay to accept that in anything that we decide to do.
Yeah.
Right? We decide to do something, we will fail. Right? We do this podcast and nobody listens to it. that could happen, right? It's a total possibility. Of course, we love every single one of you that do listen, so appreciate you. I think when we accept whatever that fear is, on the other side of that acceptance of fear starts coming the ability to move beyond it.
Yeah, you can't live your life like Bubble Boy.
No. And I think maybe that's the topic. That's the title, right? Don't live your life like Bubble Boy, because I think what you end up doing is you end up living a shallow version of yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're too afraid to go to the deep end. Ooh.
Ooh.
I like the way that came out. My goodness.
Write that on the whiteboard. Yeah. No, I really think that that's true, and I think that when we live our life in fear, you just keep yourself from reaching your fullest potential.
Mm-hmm.
Because I really think, like, okay, we talked about Portillo's earlier because we were talking about hot dogs.
Yes.
If he, started his little hot dog cart stand,
Yes.
and if he lived in this fear of, like, you know what, like, I'm just never going to get past being at this hot dog stand, I'm just going to close it down, he wouldn't be a billionaire with, like, a chain of Portillo restaurants.
Right.
And so I think that, where
And you heard that correctly, by the way, everybody. That was B with a billionaire.
Yeah, a billionaire on hot dogs. Things in casings. I don't. Yeah.
And in Chicago, which is not
The
like
most
a
random place.
very competitive place for hot dogs.
Yeah.
There's a Chicago style hot dog if you didn't know that. So,
Yeah.
it's on Puppy Seat, but anyway.
It's a coffee seat, but it is, and it has like mustard and
Yes, no ketchup. That's,
no ketchup. It has
they say it's for
mustard,
kids.
onions,
Yes, tomatoes.
relish, right?
Yeah, they're like this neon green relish.
Neon green relish, and then does it have like sauerkraut on it or something?
It has sport peppers.
Oh,
And a pickle.
Yeah,
It
I can see it in my mind.
I am literally salivating
Salivating?
right now,
Yeah.
everybody. I'm so
I
sorry.
don't know. When I was in Chicago, I didn't have a Chicago hot dog, but I did have a Chicago pizza, and it was really good.
Yeah.
But anyways, to go back to not food, yeah, I just think that the biggest thing about fear is recognizing it,
Mm-hmm.
and then subconsciously doing something to address it, such as why we got on this topic was because that's exactly what the intern did. Was he realized his fear,
Mm-hmm.
addressed it, and was bold enough to come back and say, hey, these are my fears. Like, this was the reason why I acted the way that I did, and it was due to fear, but I know that, like, I'm at a point now where I'm ready to face my fears and fail forward.
Yes. And that's a phenomenal phrase.
Yeah.
Because I think that's where, I don't know where it starts, Megan, but I think for a lot of people, we start fearing failure at a pretty young age, especially in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's our traditional school system, but like right now, I just posted up. We're in H Mart yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and little Jaden, he's 2, everybody, and he hears this music and he just starts dancing at the checkout, right? And then what's funny though is the 14-year-old he's a chip off the old block, so he's shameless. And so he starts dancing. Now he dances like a white guy, no offense, but he has no rhythm. Little
You
Jaden.
should have recorded that.
I do have it. It's
okay.
up on YouTube in a private channel or private video. But yet, Jaden, it reminds me of that phrase. It's love like you've never been heard, dance like nobody's watching, sing like nobody's listening, love like you've never been hurt, and live like there's no tomorrow or something like that. And so it's just this idea that if you and I weren't shackled down with fear that's holding us back,
Mm-hmm.
then do what you want to, embrace that, that ability to just have the abundance of life.
Yeah, I think a lot of people that are very like I would say a lot of people where they're admired for being bold, it's because they are fearless.
Mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily they don't have the self-limiting belief, or they're not scared of what others think of them. The AC just turned off.
Yeah, it's probably good. It's getting cold here in Houston.
It was getting
Cold, by the way, for anybody that's listening that's not around here. So Houston's typically like in the 90s and higher. So today it's 55, and people are like freaking out at how cold it is outside.
I walked out of my office earlier to the garage, and I was like, oh my god, it's cold. And it was only like 65.
And I'm still coming from like central Wisconsin, where I'm just like, oh yeah, this is still a really nice day.
Yeah.
Real brisk.
Yeah, exactly. But anyways,
well, I hope anybody that listens to this, Megan, realizes that whatever fears that they're experiencing are meant to give them some kind of inclination to do something. Like, right? So scary things. Then don't go watch horror movies. Don't go to trick or treating, Halloween, haunted houses, right? But I think fear. If let's say I'm afraid to fail at something, like let's say I'm afraid to like go to college because I don't want to fail courses and pay money, then maybe that means I need to study harder. Maybe I need to learn more. Maybe I need better learning habits. Maybe I need better friends that are also going to college. And so what fear there is trying to make us do is actually learn more and be more and embrace this idea that we do fail forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the tangent of my son, is that he was totally fine with just dancing because he's 2. And I think when we allow ourselves to accept that failure is part of the process, and sometimes it's, it's parents, we have a tendency to do this, right? My son comes home, he has a 92%, right? On it, dude, what, there's 8%. So instead of me focusing in on the
You're
90,
such an Asian
yeah,
parent.
I am, right?
That's such an Asian parent thing too. I'm like, well, a 92, that's so good, Sherman. You're like, no, there's 8% that you could have done.
Did we miss something on this, right? And so that's the problem, right? As a parent, is you have a tendency to be like, instead of looking at the majority, 92% that was right, 88% that was right, even 76% that was right, all you need to focus in on then is the 24. But the problem is that if I have a tendency then as an adult to a parent to child in only emphasizing what got wrong, that small little percent, they then react of, I don't want to disappoint mom or dad.
Yeah.
Their fear of disappointing me now is they get so hell bent on not wanting to make a mistake that they play it safe.
Yeah.
So instead of being risky in career, they go, well, let me go get an 8 to 5 job. I'll take that salary because I can't start my own business. I'm too afraid, Megan, right? Like, I've done the network marketing before. I tried to sell Amway, vitamins that are like horse pills, right? And I wonder why that wasn't successful, because it was garbage, dude. No offense to Amway.
I have a friend that takes Amway pills, and the other day he was like, oh my god, that was so hard to take. And then that's just funny that you said that they were horse pills. I've never actually seen them.
Oh my gosh, Megan.
I've never seen these pills, but
got
that's
when we were
really
younger.
funny though that you just said that, because he literally was like, god, it was so hard to swallow these pills. And I made an off-color comment about it.
Of course you did.
But yeah.
So he should, like, almost all vitamins at this point should be taken in like some kind of powder form. Like, that's the technology. This is 2019, so come on.
We shouldn't even need it. It should be downloaded into our body at this point. It's 2019.
Oh, just got my vitamin K.
Wow, that would be awesome. But then we'd be robots. So, But I think a lot of the time though with fear, and I guess differentiating, because sometimes people, obviously going back to the thing with like, if you have fear of like scary things, don't watch scary movies.
Yeah.
Like obviously there's a difference, I think, between like there's 2 different categories of fear.
Absolutely.
Like having a fear of heights is like one thing.
Yeah.
But like having a fear of like doing something that is, whether it's like starting a business or getting into a relationship or, whatever it is.
Going to the gym.
Whatever that thing is, I think the difference is that usually when it's something that you're constantly thinking about and it keeps being presented in front of you, your fear is just whatever self-limiting beliefs that you have, or you having not, I don't know, something that you have to work out like internally and psychologically to get over.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's where I think for a lot of people, if they can embrace and feel empowered that they can make these different changes to overcome that fear, I think they'll find themselves very freed of that mentality.
Yeah.
Just like, I think not should everybody have a side gig? No. But I think a lot of people should be doing something that brings them real happiness.
And I think that realistically, in that instance, like jumping out of a plane is like one thing. Like, yes, you could die.
Yeah.
Like your parachute could not,
Yeah, that's like statistics, by the way.
Oh, yeah, that's like-
gravity does not stop ever.
Yeah. That's just real. That's like physics. But when it comes to like other things, like even getting into a relationship is like different because that's like an emotional hurt, and that's like the scariest thing for a lot of people. But like even like getting into a relationship and it failing, or starting a business and it failing, or getting into a new job, or trying something new and failing at it, like at the end of the day, like you're just back at square one, so why not take the leap?
Yeah.
Like that's what I tell people that like are scared about network marketing. No, I don't know with every other company what their policy is, but with the company that I'm with, there's a 30-day money back guarantee. So you have 30 days to try it. If you don't like it, then you return it, you get your money back, and you're back at square one, and you move on. And kind of the same thing. If you go and you're like, I want to try stand-up comedy, and you go and you do stand-up comedy and not a single person laughs at you, then cool. I mean, you'll be slightly embarrassed for that second, but after that, I mean, you're back at square one, not being a stand-up comedian.
What's funny though is we're always at square one.
Yeah.
It's only this illusion that you and I, because this is a perfect example, right? You've done your current role of recruiting since you got out of college, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yet here you are at a new place, learning something new, and you're in a sense you're feeling like you're starting at square one.
Mm-hmm.
But we're always starting at square one.
Yeah.
It's just this. It's this figment of our imagination that now, yes, you and I might have a habit of brushing our teeth and taking a shower and doing.
I would hope we have that.
Certain activities that we do that are more habitual,
Mm-hmm.
but we're constantly learning something new, right? Like you're meeting a ton of new people at your new place.
Yeah.
You're learning a new way of doing things. After 15 years or so, am being told that I need to memorize a certain particular language on the way that I'm doing things as well, and again, it's just part of that learning process.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes I know myself personally, I feel like I'm tricking myself thinking that I'm experienced, when in reality I'm kind of learning things new pretty constantly on how to do things right, work in a relationship, work in business relationships, navigate a new place, learn how to drive to go to a new restaurant or something.
Yeah.
I'm constantly looking. I am starting at square one with a lot of things.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about showing up and putting in effort.
Yeah.
And you can only be upset with yourself. I think more people will find themselves more upset for not trying than they do for trying. Like, I don't really know a lot of people who are like, I mean, there might be an instance where like, God, I'm